for whatever reason, there's a ram, a male, instead of a female lamb. Whatever. Okay, just...
Lambs are all females?
I guess. Is that what you just said? A lamb is...
No, the ram is a male.
The ram is the male.
A ewe is a
A ewe is a female, a ram, but it's still a lamb. Is that what you're saying? A ram is a lamb, but it's a... Okay, see, I don't know these things. I mean, I don't know anything about farm animals, and all I know is that rams are authorized as sacrifices.
Ram is the daddy one.
Ram is a daddy lamb or sheep or what. Okay, all right. I'm glad to hear this. Now, I do know that the horns on the rams are the smaller shofars, the literal ones. You know, that one big long one I had, I think, is a Yemeni, from Yemen originally. But anyway, okay, didn't mean to get off too far on the ram and lamb thing, but I never understood the farming angle of it. Okay, verse 14, please.
And Abraham called the name of that place, the Lord will provide.
Okay, some people will say Jehovah Jireh or Yehovah, Yahweh Yireh in Hebrew. Okay, Y-I-R-E-H. The Lord will provide.
As it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it will be provided.
Okay, so the question is, this was written at the time of the Moses, as it is said to this day, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. Still future tense when it was given to Moses, right? It is a prophecy that the lamb will be provided, and it was, in the person of Jesus Christ, in exactly the same spot at some future point, okay? The Lord provided a temporary offering back at the time of Abraham, but that is not what that's pointing to. This is actually pointing to the final sacrifice of Jesus on this mountain 1800 years later after the time of Abraham. So the Lord will provide, and that's one of my favorite verses in the Bible, is on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. I love that verse. I made a sign every Easter time. I have a cross with signs on it that I put out in front of my house, and I change it each day during the Passion Week for different things. Anyway, this is what I have on there, anticipating the cross. And then when I get to the cross, I have a different one. Then the day after the cross, I have a different one, whatever. But yeah, very, very nicely worded verse there. Okay, verse 15, please.
In Leviticus 22:19, it says, you present a gift for a burnt offering to the Lord, either to fulfill a vow or as a freewill offering. You must present a male without defect from the cattle, sheep, or goats, in order that it may be accepted on your behalf. Do not bring anything with a defect, because it will not be accepted on your behalf. When anyone brings from the herd or flock a fellowship offering to the Lord to fulfill a special vow or a freewill offering, it must be without defect or blemish to be acceptable.
Okay, and that was Leviticus 22?
Yeah. So it was like, and then, so it was like, not only was the lamb provided, but it was perfect without blemish.
And you'll see that anytime an offering is made, that it is to be without offering. Now, there are times, let me see, if somebody offers one with a blemish, it won't be accepted, but he can offer it. There are certain, we're going to get to this in Leviticus, and it's a book that's hard to remember all the offerings. There are so many different offerings, but in that case, it specifically mentions a male of the flock. And that goes to what you just read, seeing as how you read it, and we're going to divert for just a second because you brought up the point of the male without a blemish. And this is mentioned in the Old Testament several times, but seeing as how it's right at the end of the Old Testament, we'll go to Malachi 1, verse 14, it says, but cursed be the deceiver who has a flock, in his flock a male, and takes a vow, but sacrifices to the Lord what is blemished. For I am a great king, says the Lord, and my name is to be feared among the nations. So this is what they were doing, is they were offering unacceptable sacrifices. Instead of, they have a good one, and instead of offering the good one, they say, and what does he say? He goes on here, would you do this to your governor? Where is that? Oh boy, anyway, let me see if I can find what I'm looking for real quickly here. Oh yeah, go back to verse 8. It says, and when you offer the blind as a sacrifice, speaking of a blind offering, is it not evil? And when you offer the lame and sick, is it not evil? Offer it then to your governor. Would he be pleased with you? Would he accept you accept you favorably, says the Lord? He's making a point that if your governor won't accept a blind offering, why would I? I created your governor, for crying out loud, right? And so that's what we're doing. And that goes, nothing's changed. We do the same thing in churches today. We offer something that cost us nothing. David says, I won't offer a sacrifice that costs me nothing. Well, that's what, if we do that, it shows the corruptness of our, it's not a sacrifice, and not only that, it's not a sacrifice, but it's
Weaselly.
yeah, I mean, it just shows contempt for the fact that Jesus is the one that
What he did for us
is,
we're giving back.
yeah, look at what we're giving back. So, I mean, it
But
just,
in reality, how we live our lives is the same.
that's right. And nothing has changed. It's just the same way as that. So, but you're right. It's not an acceptable sacrifice, and yet we hold it up and we let people see what we're doing, and it makes it look like we're such great people when in fact means nothing. So,
Charlie, it says here in Leviticus 22 also, you may, however, present a free will offering of an ox or sheep that is deformed or
that's what I was thinking of.
will not be accepted in fulfillment
Of a vow. Okay, I knew there was in there, and like I said, it's hard to remember all the sacrifices. I'm glad you found that. You can't, and I didn't want to say that unless I knew it for certain, because you don't want to instruct wrong. But yes, you can offer a defective animal, but not in fulfillment of a vow. In other words, I'm vowing something, and now I'm doing the sacrifice in fulfillment of that vow. Okay, Paul, when he shaved his head, remember he's going back down to Jerusalem. It says he shaved his head and he had to go down and do a sacrifice in fulfillment of a vow. Well, he could not sacrifice whatever was authorized to sacrifice in fulfillment of that vow, a blemished animal. But you can say, you know what, this is all I have. I guess the reason why that particular verse is in there is somebody says, all I have is a blemished animal, and I'd like to give it to the Lord, And so the Lord will accept it as a free will offering, I think is what you said.
No vow intended.
But no vow intended, right.
Isn't that what the temple merchants were doing, selling?
Well, no, what they were doing was they were selling them without blemish, most likely, because that was what was prescribed by the law. But they were charging, in other words, you had Hebrew money, which was only acceptable at the temple. You couldn't bring money from any of these other Egypt or Persia or wherever else. And they would come down here, and the exchange rate should be, we'll say $1 for 100 yen, right? Well, what they're doing is they're charging 300 yen. Or vice versa, whatever. They're charging exorbitant rates. Now, that's what's believed is going on here, is that is what got Jesus upset when he cleansed the temple. It wasn't that they were selling offerings down there, because that's what they were required to do. The people may not have had a lamb in their home to carry down to Jerusalem, so they had to get a lamb somewhere. It's that the people were profaning the temple by doing something that they shouldn't have been doing. They're making money off of something that should be there for the people to come down and be able to fulfill their vows and their offerings. So that's probably, I don't think that they would have been offering blemished sacrifices. What's that?
Be the category of usury.
Usury, absolutely. Yeah, well, usury is that's the same thing. Yeah, but is that interest when you charge? Usury is when you give a loan and you charge interest, right?
No,
but
it's an exorbitant. It's the exorbitant rate, I thought.
okay. So usury is also, it's not just a loan, it's also charging a higher rate of exchange.
How do you spell that?
Okay, USURY. All right, yeah, I've always thought that usury was on a loan. If somebody gives you a loan and you say, as a matter of fact, they're not even supposed to charge each other interest in Israel. But some people are charging excessive interest. But maybe selling something is usury too. Okay, I never heard that. So anyway, but yeah, usury is something that they were not allowed to do to each other. But that is what I think they were probably doing down there. And like I say, I can't imagine the very people that are supposed to be sacrificing an unblemished animal, selling an unblemished animal. Then maybe they did, I have no idea, but you see the logic there is that this is an animal that they're going to turn around and sacrifice in another day at the temple. So, but one way or another, in Malachi and throughout the Old Testament, they are giving wrong sacrifices. And not just that, but as it says in Isaiah, and I'm going to misquote this, if somebody finds it, that's great, but it says that, I don't want to misquote what it says, but your sacrifices are an abomination to me. And they were required to make these sacrifices. So why would he say that? Why would he say...
Repentant.
They weren't repentant. They were going through the motions. That's exactly right. And that goes back, we got in a real heated one, Janice and I, on, which we always do. Janice and I are always getting back because it helps us to solidify our own doctrine. But she is firmly convinced that the sacrifice for Cain was not acceptable because it was not a blood offering. And that I totally disagree with that. In Hebrews 11, it says, by faith, Abel offered a better sacrifice. Okay? It was the faith involved in the sacrifice. And I use that verse from Isaiah to say, you can offer all the blood sacrifices you want in the world, and it means absolutely nothing. It means nothing if you don't have faith involved in it. Everything, I'm telling you, everything in this Bible eventually turns out to faith. Everything. Abraham's testing here is faith. And so it wouldn't make any difference at all if Abel, who offered the blood sacrifice, did it without faith. It would have been just as contemptible then as it was during the time of Isaiah. So I totally disagree with her, and she will not agree with me. So I want you to know there are different opinions on this. I'm not trying to slam her. I'm saying you check it out for yourself, because she is firmly convinced that it is a blood sacrifice. The Bible never says that. It never says that the blood sacrifice is what was acceptable and that the meal offering wasn't acceptable. And in fact, meal offerings are authorized elsewhere in the Bible. First fruits, etc. So I look at it as a faith problem with Cain, not that he sacrificed, because this is what he did. He was he wasn't a tender of the sheep. He was a raiser of the crops and stuff. So he offered from what his labor was. But he probably walked up there with all that stuff and says, "There you go," walked away. You know, it meant nothing to him. Whereas Abel says, "You know, Lord, I understand that this is your creation. This is my favorite lamb, and I'm giving it to you as my offering, and I'm going to miss it when I sacrifice it, but here you go." So there's a difference in approach on there. Anyway, it's a matter of the heart, and Abraham had the matter of the heart right here. So, okay, please, I don't remember where we were, but 15 maybe?
Then the angel of the Lord called to Abraham the second time from heaven and said, "By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this thing, and have not withheld your son, your only son. Indeed, I will greatly bless you, and I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars of the heavens, and as the sand which is on the seashore. And your seed shall possess the gates of your enemy, of their enemy."
Okay, hang on one second. I want to check one more thing before we go on. And let's see here, 22. Okay, same thing there. Just wanted to make sure terminology was right. So here we have, by myself I have sworn, okay? And that goes to the book of Hebrews. It says, when the Lord promised by two immutable things. Where was that? It's a Hebrews, hang on one second here. He quotes this particular verse, and I'm probably not going to find it real quickly, but the Lord promised by... What's that? Oh, okay. He quotes this, I believe, this particular verse in the book of Hebrews when he says, by two immutable things, where is it? The Lord will not... Okay, for when God made a promise to Abraham, verse 13 of 6, Hebrews 6:13, for when God made a promise to Abraham, because he could swear by no one greater, he swore by himself, saying, surely blessing I will bless you, and multiplying I will multiply you. And so after he patiently endured and obtained the promise, blah, 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 then it goes down. Thus God determined, this verse 17, to show more abundantly to the heirs of the promise the immutability of his counsel, confirmed by an oath. He's swearing by himself. And it says that by two immutable things in which it is impossible for God to lie, we might have a strong consolation who have fled for refuge to lay hold of the hope set before us. So he's using this as a verse in Hebrews to make a point about the supremacy of Jesus' work over whatever he was talking about in there. And I have a note in Revelation 10:6 here. This is my own note. Whenever I have something in the Bible that isn't cross-referenced, I do, and I don't know why I put Revelation 10:6 in here, so I want to see why I did that. 10:6 it says, and swore by him, the angel whom I saw standing on the sea and on the land raised his hand up to heaven and swore to him by him who lives forever and ever. Okay, and as I said, I believe that that is Jesus, because he's got his foot on the land, he's got his foot on the shore. That is showing total dominion over both realms, the land and the sea.